Hi, everyone. Say hi to those people who I can see. I think that's Joe Schwartz behind this box on my screen. Hello, Shabbat Shalom. We were just talking about you. I was speaking with Irv a moment ago. I see Gary and Marlise. I see the Shadpur last name. I see Joel Cooper. It's really nice to see everybody online. Greeting people here on the field as well. We'll give it one more minute to see if we get minions since we jumped into the Torah service so quickly here. So we'll give it a moment and then we will head into our Mincha service in our Siddharim. Oh, yeah, I did. Thank you. Oh, yeah. The scrunchie. It's my daughter's scrunchie is what it is. That's what happens when you're a mom. It's like your kids' things are everywhere. I'll put it in my bag. Funny. I thought Gary and Marlise were there. All right, we're getting closer. I thought it was Gary and Marlise, but I'll say hi to Marlise because Gary is here. Okay. We'll begin our services with a contemplative ashrei. We'll see if we get to our minyan by the time we finish up our ashrei. We begin on page 214 in Lev Shalem, wherever Shabbat Mincha is found in your Siddur at home as well. And hello to the Hazani family also, and whoever might be watching on YouTube. Ashrei 214. Ashrei Yushavi Veitecha Od Yalilucha Sela Ashrei Am Shekach Alo Ashrei Am Shadonai Elohav Tehillah LeDavid Aramim Chalai Hamelech V'Hashemcha. Tehillat Adonai daber pi vivarech kol basar shem kodsho leolam vaed v'anachnu nivarech yami etavi ad olam hallelujah uva Tzion kol shavefesh abi Yaakov neum Adonai v'ani zofriti otam. V'yatakadosh Shevti Lot Yisrael, v'kara zel ze v'amar, kadosh 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 Adonai tzvaot, melo kol haaretz kevoto. V'tisahini ruach v'shmecharai kol rash gadol, baruch kevod Adonai mimekomo. Adonai lo le'olam va'ed. Adonai ויבטחו בך יודעי שמך, כי לא עזבת דורשך אדוני, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה וידיר. We are not quite a minyan here on the field, which means that we move into a non-Minyan based Torah service. So we'll ask for Joel to come forward and read for us in just a moment from the Chumash rather than from the Torah scroll itself from next week's Parsha. Ready? I don't have any time here. If you have an Eitz Chaim Chumash, we're on page 503. Joel will start with the blessing la'asok b'divrei Torah. Shemot, Exodus 27, verse 20, if you're in any other kind of a Bible.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצווה וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה. ואתה תצווה את בני ישראל לכו אליך שמן זית זך כתית למאור לעולת נר תמיד מועל מועד מחוץ לפרוכת אשר לעדות יערוך אותו אהרון ובניו מערב עד בוקר לפני אדוני חוקת עולם לדורותם מאת בני ישראל. ואתה הקרב אליך את אהרון אחיך ואת בניו איתו מתוך בני ישראל הקראנו לי אהרון נדב ואביהו ואלעזר ואיתמר בני אהרון. ועשית בגדי קודש לאהרון אחיך לכבוד ותפארת. ואתה תדבר על כל חוכמי לב אשר מלאתיו רוח חוכמה ועשו את בגדי אהרון לקדשו לכהן לי ואל הבגדים אשר יעשו חושן ואפוד ומעיל וכתונת תשבץ מצנפת ואבנת ועשו בגדי קודש לאהרון אחיך ולבניו לכהנו לי והם ייקחו את הזהב ואת התכלת ואת הארגמן ותולעת שני ואת השש ועשו את האפוד זהב תכלת וארגמן תולעת שני ושש מסזר מעשה חושן שתי כתפות חברות יהיה לו לשני קצותיו וחובר וחשב עפודתו אשר עליו כמעשהו ממנו יהיה זהב תכלת וארגמן ותולעת שני ושש מסזר ולקחת את שתי אבני שוהם ופיתחת עליהם שמות בני ישראל שישה משמותם על האבן האחד ואת שמות השישה הנותרים על האבן השנית כתולדותם מסך השבן פיתוחי אותם תפתח את שתי אבנים על שמות בני ישראל מסובות משבצות זהב תעשה אותם ושמת את שתי האבנים על כתפות האפוד אבני זיכרון לפני ישראל ונשא אהרון את שמותם לפני אדוני על שתי כתפיו לזיכרון.
A big Yeshar Koach to Joel for reading for us from Parshat Tetzaveh. More on that the coming Monday and Thursday and next Shabbat. Before we continue in our service, even when we don't take the Torah scroll out of the Ark, we take this opportunity on Shabbat afternoon in the midst of the Torah service to say El Malei Rachamim prayers on the anniversaries of the deaths of loved ones. We have at least one to mark here on our field today. Irv, I'll ask you to come forward just a little bit, at least, that I can take from you the name of your mom on this first yard site as we're in Adar Aleph. Ask you maybe to give me her name now. Is it easy to remember? Her name? Mm-hmm. It's Rucha Rucha Bat Esther. Hail Malei Rachamim, Shochain Pameromim, Hamzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Shechina, B'malot Kedoshim Utvarim, Kezoar Arachia Mazhirim, Lenishmat Berucha Bat Esther, Shelecha Le'olamha, Beganei Hayden Teimenu Chata Hanabala Rachamim Hastirei Habeseter Knafecha Leolamim Utzor Bitzrachayim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata V'tanuach V'shalom Al Mishkava V'nomar Amen. I invite you to share a memory on this first yard site.
My mom's name was Bella, and she was beautiful, and her Hebrew name was Brucha. So I wrote in the eulogy that she was a beautiful blessing in all of our lives. Her main trait, the essence, was that we never heard her say a bad word about anybody. That is an extremely high bar, which I fail at living up to regularly, but I'm working on it. But that's the strong memory. I brought with me the eulogy that I wrote. If you're interested, I'll be happy to share that with you. Thank you very much for being here for the Minyan, and thank you for Del Mole.
Yes, Yehi Zichra Baruch and Brucha, and Irv, you're a blessing to us for your presence regularly in the Minyan. I think we don't thank our regular Minyanaires enough. Not only is it a blessing to her that you continue to show up and honor her by saying Kaddish, but you've helped to make our Minyan. You've helped to make the Minyan in other communities locally, and that is a continued blessing as well. So may her memory continue to be a blessing through those actions as well. Is there anybody else here on the field who has a yard site to mark this week? Yes. Whose is it, Gary? Mom. Oh, I didn't realize. Oh, you now share it, yeah. No, well, a couple days, a week. Yeah. My mom's name is Shoshana. Okay, take them on. Ah, okay, so Shoshana Babate. Hail Malira Chamim Shochain Bamromim Amtzi Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Shechina B'malot Kedoshim Utorim Kezor Haraki Amazhirim Lenishmat Shoshana Bat Batya Shelecha Leolama Beganei Hayden Teimenu Chata Ana Rachamim Hastirei Habeseter Knafecha Leolamim Utzror Bitzror Chayim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata V'tanuach B'shalom Al Mishkava V'nomar Amen. Gary, is there a memory of your mom that's coming to mind?
My mom, born in Germany, she was left Germany in 38, pretty late, and went to South America to Brazil, not Brazil. She went to South America, and then she eventually came to the States. Was actually a nursery school teacher, and met my father on a Jewish function, and that's how they met and everything else. So they raised two good kids, and she was a great mom.
The nursery teachers of the world deserve much memory and blessing. Yehi zichra baruch. Gary, thank you for sharing that memory and for bringing her to mind for all of us today. Is there anybody who is on Zoom who wanted to have an Almali said on the yard site on the anniversary of a loved one's death? I see, I can't see your first name, but I see one of, with last name Shadpur. Maybe Hector can help us unmute. And you could share with us who this is for. Hang on one second. Let's make sure that you're unmuted. Hector, do you think that you could unmute so that we can hear?
Yeah,
Yes.
There we go. Now I can hear.
yeah. It's for my brother that he was in Iran, and for 11 months, we say Sephardi. He died, passed away a few months ago in Iran, and it was because of his coronavirus over there.
Wow.
Don Ben Ezra.
Got it. And is it your custom to be saying El Male within those months?
Yeah, whenever there is Malay Rachamim for 11 months, yeah, that's our custom.
Got it. Okay. And would you like me to say El Male in his name?
Yeah, please.
Okay. What is his name?
Don Ben Ezra.
Say it one more time.
Dan Ben Ezra.
Okay. Great. Dan Ben Ezra. Okay. El Male Rachamim Shochid Bamiromim Hamzeinu Chanachona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'malot Kedoshim Utornim Gezohar Harakiam Hasirim Lenishmat Dan Ben Ezra Shelach Leolamho V'gan Eden De Menuchato Anabala Rachamim Hasirehu Beseter Knafecha Leolamim Utzor Bitzor Rechaim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'Nomar Amen. I'm so sorry to hear of this loss, especially a brother, especially so far away, especially of COVID during times of COVID. Is there a memory of him that is coming to mind right now?
No, he was an electrical engineer and very smart guy, but for some reason, he never got married, and he stayed over there. Yeah, and that's the reason. More, I want to say Kadish because he has no son or anybody. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Well, Yehi Zichro Baruch, may his memory stay alive through all those who knew him, and especially you, and we honor him along with you today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else I want to be sure not to miss at a yard site today, or is honoring someone with a male this week? Okay. All right. So close. We've come very close, but not quite, to Minyan here. And so we'll move into a whispered private Amidah for Shabbat afternoon. You can find it in Sidor Lev Shalem on page 223, or wherever Shabbat Mincha Amidah is found in the Sidor you might have with you at home. Rise and recite it individually. If you haven't yet completed your own private Amidah, you can continue at your own pace. Aleinu 231. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tekru l'adir tzebreishit shelo. Hakatu l'torah tovadu. Hakatu v'toratech Adonai imloch v'olam va'ed v'nemar. V'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz b'yom hahu yihi Adonai echad u'shmo echad. Mourners Kaddish 232. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah. V'yama divra kirute v'yamlich malchute. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'gala u'bizman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lamei almaya. Yit barach v'yishtabach v'yit pa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yit hadar v'yit alei v'yit halal shemei tekudsha berichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechamata, damiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Ose shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Again, yasher koach to Joel for learning and chanting for us the verses of Parshat Tetzaveh that we do this week in anticipation of next week's Parsha. We are now going to take a brief pause in services so that we can do Seudah Shlishit. If you're at home, I invite you to go nourish yourself with something. We are going to go and take some food and drink here on the field. An encouraging reminder to please cover your nose and mouth while you're up at that food. We're still wearing masks over our noses and mouths out here on the field, except for the immediate individual who's leading or teaching at the time. And we'll be back together in another, I think, 10 or 15 minutes to learn with rabbinic resident Julia Noblach some Israeli poetry, some American poetry.
Blame the dog.
Okay, friends, we're going to get started with the teaching in just a moment. Thank you. So we said, what time is it now? Oh, it's 5:20. Okay. So 5:45. Hmm? Yeah. Great. All right. Shabbat Shalom. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. Shabbat Shalom to everyone on Zoom. Today we are not talking about Israeli poetry per se, but we're talking about Jewish poetry. And we're talking about poetry by Leonard Cohen. And earlier I said, no, American poetry, but obviously, while he did live in LA, he was Canadian. I don't know if he had Israeli citizenship. He might have had, I don't know. Leonard Cohen, I don't think I need to say so much to introduce about who he was, like singer-songwriter with a long, many decades spanning career. And originally he started out as a poet, like only as like he was like literally writing poetry back in Montreal at McGill University. And then he was in New York in the 60s, and he always told the story, like not to me. I mean, I have actually met him in person, but he didn't tell me that story. But it's an oft-quoted story, how he decided he needed to make a living, and he wasn't making any living off poetry, which I can agree that doesn't really work. So he started to look into having his songs first performed by other singers, actually not by himself, and then obviously he started singing himself, and then the years before he died, when did he die? In 2016, he was on this never-ending world tour, allegedly again because he didn't have any money, because he was in a Buddhist monastery in the hills here around Los Angeles, and apparently the story goes that his manager took all his money and he had to go on tour, which was a blessing for me because I got to see him twice on these concerts, because when he was playing in New York clubs, I was not around. So so that was great. I think he's known a lot for his erotic and very romantic and very sensual poetry. He wrote a few political songs as well, and a lot of, I think what is one of the features that is very characteristic of his poetry is that you can read them on all sorts of different tiers. Like there's a one song that's called Lover, Lover, Come Back, Lover, 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 and Lover, Come Back to Me. And he said that it was that he was written after when in the 60s, when was the Sinai War between Egypt and Israel? 67, right? So he visited. He gave concerts for soldiers of the Israeli army, and so he had a lot of political message in his songs, even though you would not necessarily read them as such, because they are often sort of wrapped into a love relationship that reads like lyrics about a love relationship between two lovers. And the same is true for one of my favorite things that I'm trying to imitate as well a little bit in my own right, about what is so often done in Jewish tradition and poetry, about these two overlapping levels of talking about a love relationship between God and Israel, or God and man, or God and human, and that can also be understood as two lovers, that two human lovers. So that comes up a lot. One of the prime examples is Shir HaShirim, and he took it. What I find so amazing, and when we will dive into these three songs that I brought, two of which are some very late songs. The third one, the one in the middle, If It Be Your Will, certainly is also a later work, but it's not.
it might be, it's not as among the very last songs that he brought out before he died, like these two ones. So he has an intensity and depth to his songs that I find breathtaking, and sometimes he's very direct and very very direct, and just doesn't hold back in anything. But his songs are still so much grounded in Jewish thought and imagery and tradition. And he was very, very learned. He was very, very knowledgeable. So he knows what he's doing. And he also searched a lot while he was brought up as a Jew, of course, and he is very Jewish in a lot of in most of his poetry. But there were times when he was searching and inquiring of other religions, what they could give him. Like I said, he was in the Buddhist monastery. He had his flirt with Christianity, which actually comes up in quite a few songs. And I do believe in it, it is in the third poem that I brought for tonight, and all sorts of other religions. But he was a true Jew in the sense that if we say we're called Israel because we struggle with God, and I think that must be certainly true for his life, and also for these three poems. And why did I bring Leonard Cohen today of all days? Because I try to always have like some sort of nod to the parsha in which we are on. In this case, we are like in between Truma and Tetzaveh, which are the two parashiot about the first time, the beginning of the building of the Mishkan, and then as of tonight, Tetzaveh, many commandments about the priest and the priesthood, and well, Cohen is Kohen, so I didn't know if he was actually a Kohen, but I mean, the name is there. So that was one thought, but also because I do think that a lot of the poems that he has written, even the ones that feel a little bit more lighter from the 60s, that he is always searching. You said what? Tortured? Right, and no, that's what I mean. And I do think you were totally spot on what you were saying, because it's there is an existential, like, torture sense of his trying to connect to God, or trying to make sense of it all, or trying to sort of ask our tradition and the words that we recite so much, especially the love. What is the love? What does it mean, and what does it do to us? And he has been, I think, haunted by that his entire life. And especially in these three poems, I think they're good examples of this sort of lost or tortured, confused priest that is out there, and the temple doesn't exist anymore, and he's trying to make sense of it all. And so with that frame, I want to invite one of you to read the first poem out loud, if you like. Okay, thanks. Yes, so they can hear it. So should she come up? Okay. Okay, so Malka is going to read the poem so you guys can hear it.
If I didn't have your love, if the sun would lose its light and we lived an endless night and there was nothing left that you could feel, that's how it would be, what my life would seem to me if I didn't have your love to make it real. If all the stars were unpinned and a cold and bitter wind swallowed up the world without a trace, well, that's where I would be, what my life would seem to me if I couldn't lift the veil and see your face, and if no leaves were on the tree and no water in the sea, and the break of day had nothing to reveal. That's how broken I would be, what my life would seem to me if I didn't have your love to make it real. if the sun would lose its light, and we lived in an endless night, and there was nothing left that you could feel if the sea were sand alone, and the flowers made of stone, and no one that you hurt could ever heal, well, that's how broken I would be. What my life would seem to me if I didn't have your love to make it real.
Thank you, Maka. That was beautiful. Yeah, I mean, since we just read about the outline of the Mishkan, which was going to be the temple, what was going to lead to the temple, and if we think how the presence of the name of God in the temple, how that was sort of like the most intense representation or expression of God's presence or God's love, if one wants to say that, and then that goes away. I think this, what we just heard, sort of expresses pretty much a similar intensity on a poetic level. And well, I mean, I totally agree with you, and I think it's open, or it's deliberately. I think he does it on purpose. I think, yes, everything could be read as someone addressing a lover who has left them, or if they didn't, or actually, if I didn't have your love, like someone who still has the love and is sort of like saying, please don't go away, or like, it's very important to them. Exactly, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think that there is another layer to it, given that Leonard Cohen is known for playing with a lot of this Jewish imagery. And I mean, if I couldn't lift the veil and see your face is one line here that I'm reading as a deliberate reference to Judaism. To see the face of God is like one of the most, the thing that Moses asked for. And also, if we think, look at us, nowadays, seeing the face of a beloved person is always a very intense thing, but also now seeing our faces without mask, like showing one's face, is one of the most vulnerable and most intimate and most intense things that we can do. So I do think that it is connected. I am reading it, and I mean, I brought it also today for us to think about, to put it into, to read it at the back, with the backdrop of Teruma and Tetzaveya's earth. Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with Brent, and I'm reading it as being addressed to a lover, and I'm also reading it as having this deliberate sort of context. Tom? Right. Yeah, no. Yes. So we've been talking back and forth about this double layer of this poem being addressed to a lover, which it certainly is, and also sort of like looking into what is the backdrop maybe of the necessity, the meaning of the temple, and how much love of God is there to make it real. And then Tom was commenting on that there is some language, if the sea were sand alone and the floor was made of stone, how it really resonates from Ilufino. If our lips were, if our mouths were as full of this, of praise of this, like the sea, and it's true. Whether or not it's intentionally referring to that specific line, but it is language that's familiar to us from the liturgy and from Psalms, and if we can move on to the next one, if because there's more Psalm language, but Larry, right?
Last night, Rabbi Kubin mentioned Josh on the idea that Shabbos we dedicate Shabbos to God's name, and he mentioned that there are things that can't put any value like friendship, like the love of music or poetry, talking about Shakespeare, that these things that we immerse ourselves on Shabbos in these things that are just intrinsically that we're just so grateful. It seems like almost every line here.
Yeah.
It says your love, and then it compares it to the stars in the sky and all the things that are beyond God.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there was a comment. I'm sorry, you're Larry, right? What's your name again? I'm sorry. Bob. I mixed it up. No. I'm sorry. So Bob mentioned how basically every line in this poem speaks to like how important all of these things are, and how without that, nothing would be real and everything would be dead, basically. Which again refers to, you can read it as how important a beloved person is to you. I mean, for sure. The next, I'm going to read it just out of, it's easier unless someone really wants to come up and read the next one, but then it's easier for those on Zoom. The next one is called If It Be Your Will, and it is related, I think, it is different in the intensity and in sort of the angle from which it's coming, but for me, it's coming from the same kind of feeling. Believing in that love can actually make things real, even if things are broken. And we'll hear some more Psalm-related language here. If it be your will that I speak no more, and my voice be still as it was before, I will speak no more. I shall abide until I am spoken for, if it be your will. If it be your will that the voice be true, from this broken hill I will sing to you. From this broken hill all your praises they shall ring, if it be your will to let me sing. From this broken hill all your praises they shall ring, if it be your will to let me sing. If it be your will, if there is a choice, let the rivers fill, let the hills rejoice. Let your mercy spill on all those burning hearts in hell. If it be your will to make us well, and draw us near, and bind us tight, all your children here in their rags of light, in our rags of light, although all dressed to kill, and end this night, if it be your will, if it be your will. So, while there's some words in there that don't usually come up in prayer so much or in Psalms, but there's a lot of Psalm language, the hills, like the hills is one of the most that jumps right out there, jumping hills, rejoicing, but also it's interesting from this broken hill. So something has happened and has been shattered and destroyed, but there is still this pleading and appeal that it can still be, that it can still continue. And another aspect that is in there is like that is not as pronounced in the first one, even though it is indirectly as well, is this total submission to the entity that's being addressed. Like, I am totally only speaking when it's your will. And now Irv can speak. Yeah. Yeah. He usually has a dark side. Yeah. So Irv commented that there is a lot of, that what we know from the Psalms, there's distress and we're calling out to God, and we believe in that, and we believe that God can do something and intervene, and we also saying we are here to praise you and to do, and then of course it does take, and Irv called it a Cohen-esque turn, which it certainly is, because it turns it very dark in the last lines when he's, and draw us near and bind us tight. If someone, and as he did, as Leonard Cohen did, knew Hebrew and the liturgy and Torah, that of course drawing near is sacrificing, and binding us tight for every Jew is pretty obvious what that might refer to or could refer to. I'm not saying it does, but I read it, and I think Irv did too. And even like Dressed to Kill, if we have to do that to end the night that is involving us, evolving us, or surrounding us, then if it be, or well, there's utter submission there. Yeah. Yeah. Cantor Tourney. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Cantor Tourney talked about how he combines basically in this poem both the priestly and the prophetic voice. The priest sort of representing what we have to do, and the prophet basically speaking to what you, the priest doing it, and the prophet sort of like calling it out what you have to do, and delivering messages, and admonishing and painting terrible situations and scenarios, which then goes back to the point that Brent Brent make before that comment was, isn't that the most trying and most complicated and most intense thing that we have to do, that even in really, really dire moments, we have to praise God and ultimately submit to God's will. No, I don't know. It's not a super old song though. It's I want to say it was probably written in the late 90s, maybe. That's a guess. It might be. It's certainly not from his 60s or 70s. That's for sure not. But it could be from the late 80s as well, but I don't think so. The first one that we heard is on the album that came out while he was still alive, the one that's called You Want It Darker. There's actually another one that came out posthumously. And this one and the third one that we're going to look at, unless someone still wanted to comment on this one. Bob? Yeah. I mean, that's total submission there. If it be your will, Bob mentioned how it can remind of the Yom Kippur liturgy and how we just prostrate ourselves and just fall on the floor. I thought, did you want to say something? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know too much, even though we're both in Rav Giller's Intro to Kabbalah class, yet about, Malka made a point that a lot of, that the end of this poem reminded her of Kabbalistic thoughts and there's a question, what does it mean, rags of light and dressed to kill? You know, you're stripped of, you're just having rags, like you're not dressed fancy, this is all you have, but still there's emanating light, which then again might speak to what of you were saying, and you dress to kill, to yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely, for sure. Also, I was thinking, again, I don't know exactly when this was written, but it is not from the 60s or 70s, but there is a song from the 60s. I'm blanking a little bit on the total line, but I think it's actually from the Story of Isaac, or no, it's a bunch of lonesome heroes, I think. It's on the album that's called Songs from a Room, that's for sure, which is from the 60s. And There's a line, "You who kill these children now, you must not do it anymore." So it's he has a lot of recurring things where he looks at certain things that he certainly has thought about in his Jewish life. What does it mean? And it's interesting that a younger, like an older song from when he was younger has that line, and here we're having this an older self, a more mature. He has a few anti-Vietnam War songs, yes, for sure. Yep. We made it to 5:50. We can still listen. We can still like shortly look at the third, or we have time, right? Okay, so that's just to wrap it up. The third one that I brought is different from these first two, but I brought them because it, on one hand, I do think that it expresses some of his exploration of other religions than Judaism, and it had, because I wanted to. There is something priestly and solemn about it. You should also all these should be, if this were not Shabbat. It's wonderful that it is Shabbat, but should Shabbat ever end, if you don't know these songs, you should listen to them, because the music adds to the intensity and to the sacredness of sorts of them. This one is also from the last album that came out while he was still alive. It seemed the better way. Seemed the better way when first I heard him speak. Now it's much too late to turn the other cheek. Sounded like the truth. Seemed the better way. Oh, I'm just gonna hold it. Okay. Sounded like the truth, but it's not the truth today. I wonder what it was. I wonder what it meant. First he touched on love, then he touched on death. Sounded like the truth, seemed the better way. Sounded like the truth, but it's not the truth today. I better hold my tongue. I better take my place. Lift this glass of blood, try to say the grace. I'm not reading because it's just repeated, which makes sense musically, but I don't need to read it again. So for me, that does speak to when he was interested in exploring Christianity, and at the end of his life, he writes about how he sort of not continued that because ultimately it didn't convince him. But it's not very much resolved, right? There's a lot that hovers there still. Brent? Yeah. Yeah. Right. He made what? Oh, ventured. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes. Both comments were about exploring other ways and then coming back to Judaism, even though Judaism sometimes may seem to some people at a time harder to to follow. But then the easier way is not the best. So that was it. Thank you. Thanks for for your comments, and I hope it was enjoyable online. So what am I doing here? Oh, we invite someone who wants to lead us in benching, someone who had bread. Right.
We'll continue with Mariv in just a few moments. No, meaning the leader only needs to lead us in Shir Hamalos and the opening. So I don't need to challenge whoever was going to step up. Right, but when we do Birkat Hamazon on the field, we don't need to do the whole thing out loud together. We can just begin it with the Zimun and then read privately. So it's not a challenge. Anybody can lead that. Hopefully, it's not too big a challenge. Is what I meant. All right, so Gary can start us.
אז יאמרו בגויים, הגדיל אדוני לעשות עמלך, הגדיל אדוני לעשות עמנו, היינו שמחים. שוב אדוני את שיבתנו, כפי כמנהגנו, הזורים, רדימתנו יצורו, הלוך משך ובחור, מעשה משך עברה, בוא יבוא ברינה, כל שומע אבותיו. We're starting with Marif in the Lev Shalem. It's on page 264, or wherever it is in 137 or 200. והוא רחום יכפה עוון ולא ישחית, והרבה להשיב אפו ולא יאיר כל חמתו, אדוני הושיע המלך יעננו ויום קורנו. ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני. הוא מביא יום ומביא לילה, הוא מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריף ערבים. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, והם נגע יומם ולילה. ואהבת אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לחנו שירה ושמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדע בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אלה מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה זה לי אנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גיא ישראל השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום ושמו צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם ברוך אתה אדוני שומר עמו ישראל לעד כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולמי עד תמלוך בכבוד כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ועד כל מעשיו חצי קדש יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה ועמד יברא קרתי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בגלה ובשמחה זמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתחומם ויתנשא ויתהדה ויתעלה ויתעלה לשמי לקודשה ברכו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו. So we're going into the private whispered Amidah, which is on 220 in the Lef Shalem or on any other page. That's what I said, 270. But in the other, If you haven't finished your private Amidah yet, please continue at your own pace. We are going to continue with Kaddish Shalem, which is on page 280. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה. ואמר יברא קיותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. האבא מבורך לעולם ולעולמי הוויה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדה ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. תתקבל צלותון ובאתון לכל ישראל קדם אבון דבשמיא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיא וחיים עלינו והכל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו והכל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה יוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגור עלינו וכל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. שהוא נוטה שמיים ונושאים. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Mourner's Cottage on page 282. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיא, וחיים עלינו והכל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו והכל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Sure. Okay. I want to wish Julia Yasher Koach and make a quick reminder. It's a wonderful teaching. We could have all done it, speaking for myself, could have done it for another half an hour. We should all go home and listen to some Leonard Cohen. I want to make a reminder to all those present, virtually and physically, that we are continuing with Daily Minyan at the home of the Bermans, Abe Zichrono Livracha, and Annette. And that's on Idris. Depends on the day what Waze pronounces it as for me. Details are on the Bethon website or on our emails. You can ask me directly if you need help. We don't typically move our daily minyan physically to other locations than the synagogue, but we've made an exception in this particular case for a number of reasons, and we will continue through, I believe, Wednesday morning through Wednesday morning. So Daily Minyan continues online both in morning and evenings at the typical links, and also on site exclusively at the home of the Bermans online. But that means that there is an in-person minyan to go to for Daily Minyan tomorrow morning, Sunday, as there isn't usually a physical gathering of Daily Minyan. It's at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. I want to be very clear about that because that's a departure from our usual, and it's wonderful when we can make a minyan. And thank you to all those who made the ultimate minyan on our field today. The ultimate minyan. I think that's a great band name. All right. Yeah. Trademark. Yeah, nine, 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 nine. Ya nai na nai 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 nai. Ya nai na nai 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 nai. Ya na nai ya na nai nai nai. Ya na nai ya na nai nai oh. Ya na nai ya na nai nai nai. Ya na nai ya na nai nai nai. Hine el Yeshuati. Eftach v'lo hefchad. Hiosi vezim raja, Adonai vayehi li lishua, Ushaptamayim besason, Mimanei Yeshua, Ladonai Yeshua, Alamecha virchatecha sela, Adonai tzivaot, Imanu. Miskav lainu Elohei Yaakov Selah Adonai Tzivahot Asher Adam Boteach Bach Adonai Hoshia Hamelech Yaneinu V'yom Koreinu Lai Yehudim Haitahora Besimcha b'sason likar kein tiye lanu kasi Yeshu hatesa Ushem Adonai ekra Yainanai yanenai nai nai Yainanai yanenai nai nai Savri Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei besamim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei ha'esh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh lechol ben or lechoshech ben Yisrael amin ben yom hashvihi l'shisha demei hamaseh Baruch atah Adonai hamavdil ben kodesh lechol Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol Chatoteinu himcha Zareinu v'chaspeinu yarbe yarbe kacho V'hakochavim b'layla Zareinu v'chaspeinu yarbe yarbe kacho V'hakochavim b'layla Shavua tov, 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 Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. Bimera ve'yameinu Yavo Eleinu Mashiach ben David Mashiach ben David Shavua Tov, everybody. Be well.
What am I? Yes, yes. I mean, I studied literature for sure. I have a degree in like literature.
It's amazing that
yeah,
you
yeah.
bring out of
And I write poetry
and
myself.
coin.
I-
Oh,
no, no.
really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hold on, just one sec. I'll be right back.
Votre Morin Labouré par Graffin.